Hi, welcome to the Gray Space podcast. I am Gray. This is my space. And I want to say this is episode 17 of the Gray Space podcast. How are we all doing? Sound off before we get too deep into it. I hope that this is like a pretty comment heavy episode because I do want opinions. I'm not here to just be like, these are my thoughts on the books. And that means that these are the correct opinions to have on these books. And that was all. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. I don't want that, especially for the last book I'm going to talk about, because I truly need outside opinion on it, not to form my own opinion, but because my opinion is bad. And so many people's opinion of this book is not. So I literally feel like I'm missing something. Anyway, sorry, I jumped the gun a little bit. Hey, how's everyone doing? It's May 1st. We are already 5 months into 2024. And I don't think I want to talk about that actually, because that's kind of spooky. Guys, if you don't remember, I'm a Texan and our weather, especially recently, has been so disgusting. Oh my God, it's so gross. I want to like rip my skin off with the humidity. Although today it's not as bad because there's no sun today. Yesterday morning was like genuinely unbearable. I was outside and it felt like my skin was melting off, even though it wasn't even that hot. It was the humidity. Anyway, it's like gray and humid out right now, which is not really a cozy vibe, but I love the cozy vibe for the podcast and being cozy, period. So I tried my best to make this cozy. We're in bed, we're under the covers. I have a hot beverage. Guys, get a hot beverage. If you don't have one, I even put a little mood light on. All of this, the Spotify onlys are missing out on, unless I figure out how to put the videos onto Spotify. I'm kind of realizing I could and should just do that. But do y'all care about that? If you're listening on Spotify, fill in that like Q&A thing and answer this question. Do you actually care if you can or can't see me? You're not missing much. I'm holding a mug and I'm stroking my hair a little bit because it's fresh out of the shower. Anyway, I got my coffee and I have the past 4 books that I've read because we're finally doing a book review podcast. I feel like I've been teasing one of these types of podcasts for a while and being like, guys, be on the lookout. I plan on doing this. It's totally happening. And it is. I just had to sit and gather my thoughts. And I also didn't want it to be a 1 book per episode type thing because 1, that's lame. And 2, I don't think I'd have enough to say about 1 single book to fill up a podcast. When I find a book one day that makes me talk that long about it, then we'll get there. And that'll be a crazy episode that I'm really looking forward to in the hypothetical future. But anyway, I have 4 books here. They are my last 4 reads, excluding my current read, because obviously I'm not going to review my current read as I'm not very far into it because I'm just not liking it, but I don't want to DNF it. Especially because this is the second time it's happened. I'm not going to talk too much about my current read too much, but this is the second time it's happened where I've been allured by a book and like people, even my followers, not just book readers, but my followers specifically that have read that book have been like, I read that book. That's a good book. And I think you're going to like it. And I don't like it. And I don't understand why that's happening. It happens with 1 book we're talking about in this episode. It's happening again with my current read. We'll talk about it. I have 4 books. 3 are celeb autobiographies. And I don't have like a particular knack for autobiographies, but I am going to ramble about them for a little bit because honestly, underappreciated genre of book, this really got me back into reading because if you don't know, I have mentioned it, but I'll bring it up again because this is the reading podcast. I grew up like reading an actual fuck ton. I was the kid in school that would get in trouble for like trying to read under like hiding a book under my desk instead of doing the assignment. And then, high school and college and stuff, I just got burnt out, got busy, had other stuff to do. And I haven't read for fun in a really long time. And so I was really happy to get back into it. And autobiographies really helped me personally. I don't know how helpful they'll be for everyone, but for me personally, I really like just storytelling. Like I like listening to a person tell a story, and it doesn't even have to be about themselves. So it was really easy for me to transition into reading through autobiographies, because this is not a Spotify promo, but this is a very nice thing of Spotify to do. If you don't know, Spotify has like if you're a premium member, you have access to audiobooks now. And so I switched out podcasts, not like fully, I still listen to podcasts, but I started to incorporate more audiobooks than podcasts. And it was easy for me because the podcasts I listen to are people telling stories. It's a lot of like, it's scary stories, it's Reddit stories, like Smosh reading Reddit and shit like that. So it was really easy for me to get into the medium because I was already kind of in it. Now it's just like an actual book instead of a podcast. And maybe some snooty elitist out there is going to not count an audiobook as reading. But first of all, I consumed the entire book, bitch. And second of all, I have the physical copies of all the book, double bitch. So like I literally supported the author in several ways. Suck my cock. Nobody got mad at that. I don't know why I got so aggressive and energized. I'm sorry. I'm excited to be here and talk to you. Anyway, I'm going to take a sip of my coffee and we're going to get into the first read. And sorry, I will take a sip of my coffee and then go over a disclaimer and then get into it. Sorry. Disclaimer, final thing before I shut the fuck up and just talk about the books like I swear I've been gonna do. What? Take me out back and hit me in the kneecaps with a baseball bat. What the fuck? Anyway. Disclaimer, none of these are spoiler-free reviews. I'm sorry, because I really was contemplating, I was going back and forth between making them spoiler-free and not spoiler-free. I did want to do spoiler-free, but the reason I'm not is because... No, boo. What was that? And I know it was you. The reason I ultimately decided to not do a spoiler-free review is because I feel personally, I don't like to give my opinion without providing context for the opinion, especially and particularly with negative opinions, which unfortunately for one of these books, I do have kind of several negative opinions on, and I can't really talk about them or explain them without spoiling. You know, obviously I'll try not to talk about like super titular moments. But yeah, just letting you know. So first book is also, these are going in order of my like first read, my earliest read, going onward to my most recent read. So first up is I'm Glad My Mom Died, which if I'm sure you've heard of it, it is Jeanette McCurdy's autobiography, where she recalls her upbringing as a child star and her complicated relationship with her mother, how those things intertwine her entire life and how it's affected her then and now. And I gave this is a 5. I know that we're starting with a very high praise, but I don't want to start at negative. And I also couldn't, even if I wanted to. I literally don't have anything bad to say about this book. I don't think this is a 5 out of 5 stars. I have notes written down, but I like having to like talking about it out loud and thinking about it and remembering the emotions I felt when I read it, like they're kind of hitting again a little in my chest. This book, it's a hard read if you have issues with particular things, because obviously there's the warning for the abuse from her mom, from, you know, the creator and the creeps of Nickelodeon and people she's dated and eating stuff. So there are a lot, if not most things in the book are a little uncomfortable. And there are a lot of times where it's like, it's hard to hear that like someone experienced that. But so I feel kind of weird being like, I loved reading this. It was so good. But genuinely it is. I really like Jeanette's writing style. Something I noticed that I wrote down in particular is that the way she navigates, it's like from the start of getting into child acting versus like present day her. And so it narrates entirely from her perspective from child to adult. And so her writing and narration, if you read the audiobook, kind of reflects that. She talks, maybe like, I'm not saying she talks in a baby voice when she's a kid, because she doesn't do that, obviously, but it's hard to explain. There are certain ways that she talks as a kid where it's like innocent about things, even though she's not hiding what she's talking about. Like, she's not like, ugh, something bad happened to me. But she's explaining it like a kid who at the time didn't realize that what was happening to her was inappropriate and traumatic. And so that honestly makes it like hit when you're reading it, because something I like about this book, and a book that I will compliment later in this video, another compliment I have for a book, is that Jeanette talks about these things happening to her, and she doesn't like, there's never really a woe is me. If you like want to squint and pick up a problem with Jeanette's writing, I would immediately disagree with you. But I could see the argument of like her being a little catty, a little jealous at times, especially when she's talking about like iCarly and her teen years. However, people have already explained this, but having read it, I also want to give personal input. It's not just like, oh, well, yeah, it's understandable that she was jealous and bitter. She was being treated like shit. But it's also like, it makes sense when you've read the whole book as a piece. Like, her talking as a teenager and maybe being a little jaded at times, I think was a narrative choice, and I think a good one. It's reflective of her mindset at the time, which is something I really liked reading it, is that it was always like that, I guess. I don't know. I hope I'm explaining this effectively, but basically just her, not necessarily writing style, but her writing period, kind of, it changes a little bit in tone as like she moves through her life, and the text develops in complexity and thought in a way that I really like and thought was really cool, even though it wasn't something that was like really emphasized. A lot of things don't have emphasis in the book, if that makes sense. What I mean by that is that she lets her experiences speak for themselves, which I kind of already touched on in the, like, she's not really woe is meing the whole thing. Not that she's not allowed to, because if she wanted to, she could, because what she went through was unfortunate. I personally appreciate not so much of that. And I feel like that's maybe an asshole opinion to say. And I say that not because I don't want to hear like someone complaining, right? Because someone is absolutely allowed to complain about something bad that's happened to them. What I mean is that she, as I said, she just lets the events speak for themselves. You know, like she'll almost drop stuff. Like there's a moment in the book, I can't find it exactly right now, but it's towards her mom's almost last moments. It's what they think is going to be Jeanette's mom's last moments, because she is like battling with, I want to say it's cancer. And her dad and siblings and the people are saying their goodbyes, and Jeanette's narrating, and she's in her head, like she's working up this moment. She's going to talk to her mom, who at this point is like in a coma. Like they think she's gonna die. And so it's finally Jeanette's turn to talk to her mom, and she sits down and she like holds her hand, and she, this whole time has been in her head, like, I am going to say the thing that makes my mom so happy that she wakes up from a coma. And Jeanette, I want to say, is like 9, maybe a little older at this time, just for you to understand the headspace. So the thing that she chooses to say that she thinks is going to make her mom so happy that she will jump out of this coma into a joyful dance, hyperbolic, obviously, is she says, like, Mommy, I did it. I'm 90 pounds or some obviously ridiculously underweight number. And that's it. Like, that's what she says. And that's the end of the sentence. And she keeps talking about it. You know, she talks about what happens after she says it. Shocker, her mom doesn't get out of the coma, but it's telling to me, like, she knows how fucked up it is, if that makes sense. She doesn't need to go, and guys, that was bad, which I feel like people tend to do. I don't know. It leaves this almost mic droppy thing where it's like, wow, you know, like it leaves emphasis. It's powerful. And it's, for me personally, really appreciated. There are a lot of moments where I think she knows. I think Jeanette knows that, like, she's a good writer. And I think she is intelligent and talented. And I do think that she kind of timed these little event bombs, because obviously there's ups and downs throughout the whole book, but there are some things that are more shocking than others. And it's usually not dwelled upon because it wasn't in her life, really. So there's no point, which I think kind of hits the reader harder because the way she moves on from talking about things so quickly with the context of what she was talking about is a little jarring, and I think intentionally, and I really enjoy that. Yeah, this book, it got me. I think I cried several times throughout it. I really didn't want it to end whenever it did. Not because I wanted to keep reading Jeanette suffer, but I was just so enthralled in her story and her writing that I didn't want it to end. And I would reread this. I'm not a book rereader, but honestly, I think 3 of the 4 books I would reread. One of them, to be fair, it would be a begrudging reread, but a reread nonetheless. And I would reread this. This is, damn, you know, like, it's just damn. It's almost just a story that speaks for itself. So I rated that 5 stars. Next up, this is our second of 3 celeb autobiographies. This is Crying in Hmart by Michelle Zauner, who, if you don't recognize by legal name, is Japanese Breakfast, the musician. Check out her music if you haven't. I've been listening to Be Sweet by Japanese Breakfast a lot recently. Anyway, so this is an autobiography, and it details Michelle's ever-complicating relationship with her mother as she loses her battle to cancer while Michelle is trying to succeed as a musician. And I was a little torn between rating this 3 and 3.5 stars. And ultimately, it is a 3.5 out of 5 stars because I liked it more than average. So I gave it more than averaged. I've been thinking in my head, like, what about this book did I feel less attached to than the previous and the book I'll talk about next? Because they both have really high ratings, even though this one is really not that different. I think it's a little bit of a relatability matter, and maybe that's a flaw on me as a reader to enjoy things more that I relate to more. Personally, I would argue that, like, that's human nature. But I also absolutely see the benefit of challenging your own views. Not that this challenged my views, but what I appreciate about this book is that it gave me a lot of different perspectives on experiences that I kind of have, but in very different ways. So, like, I also have a complicated relationship with my mom, but not in the way that Michelle did. And so it was interesting, like, reading interactions between mother and daughter and their conflictions and how different they were from my own experiences, even though the feelings there were the same. I found that really, maybe not like super interesting, because it's not like, that's not very groundbreaking, but I appreciated it. I thought that it was a little thought provoking for me. You know, it made me think, as well as, of course, our cultural differences, because it's called Crying in Hmart. Hmart is a like big Asian grocer in, I don't know if it's just the US. I think it is. I could be wrong. But yeah, because Michelle she's Wasian. She's half Korean, but her mom is like full Korean from Korea, South Korea. So it talks a lot about the culture, which I, of course, appreciate just because I like learning about other cultures. And I also like to keep mental notes for in the future when I inevitably travel out of the country and, fingers crossed, move out of the country. But anyway, so it's interesting, like, for me, I really like Hmart. I like looking at all the different foods. It's honestly good for me because if you don't know, if I haven't mentioned 50,000 times, I'm a gluten-free vegan. And so it's a little challenging for me to find things. And so a lot of the food I eat is cultural food. I eat a fucking lot of Asian food. I eat a lot of Thai and Indian and Chinese food because it has a lot of options for me. So I like Hmart. I like the experience. It's different for me than a traditional grocery store. There's more to see. There's the whole food and shopping, it's all a grocery store, but there's like a little like a food court, like a mall has, and it's all different Asian food. It's awesome. They have that. They have like stores. I like Hmart. Maybe that's definitely white people of me to be like, I like going to the Asian store to ooh and ah at all the stuff. I hope it didn't fucking come off that way. Call me on it if it did. But that's just to say I have a positive relation with Hmart, whereas Michelle doesn't. It reminds her of her mom. She starts crying every time she's in Hmart. And so that obviously there's a bigger link than just the Hmart, because obviously she travels back and forth to South Korea and she talks about her conflicts as an Asian American with one Korean, one white parent, and how disconnected she feels from her South Koreanness. So that's why I so appreciate the perspective, I guess. It's not that I'm just like ogling at this like Asian person, but it's truly an experience and emotions that I will not experience. I'm white as all F. And you know, white people culture, it's fried chicken and having sex with your dog. I'm kidding. I'm sorry. It's beer and racism. I'm kidding again. Guys, I like to have fun. Anyway, I'm being a little stupid now, so I will try to be chill because I feel like book reviews should be chill. So yeah, I just really liked hearing about her thoughts. It made me think about an experience outside of my own. And even though I don't think I was like as emotionally, that's not true. I was emotionally invested. The actual storytelling wasn't as engaging as the read before and the read after, but I don't think that's to this book's discredit. I think I might have just picked poor placement between two traumatic books. You know, so maybe that's like bad of me, which is also why I gave it a 3.5 instead of just a 3. I was happy it ended, not because I was tired of reading it, but I honestly like the ending. I think that it is satisfying. It's glad to hear her succeed. It is like it tugs at your heartstrings a little bit because, spoilers, her mom does pass. It's hard for her. But by the time you're at the end of the book, while it's bittersweet, obviously, you feel like happy for Michelle that she's been able to accomplish what she did given the story that she's told, if that makes sense, you know? Because I didn't know this, but like before she was Japanese Breakfast, was in another band and then actually like gave up on music and was just doing the corporate thing for a little bit. So yeah, it's not as like gripping, you know? She doesn't have like 10,001 things happen in the series of what is it, unfortunate events. You know, it's not that kind of book. But if you like her music, or you honestly like a story where it's life lessons and a satisfying ending and, you know, a heartfelt insight on someone else's humanism, I would recommend this read. I don't know if I would reread it, because I think the parts that stuck to me are stuck to me, you know, so I don't feel necessarily the need to reread it, but it was a good read and I would recommend it. Okay, next, I am like internally geeking. I'm shaking holding this book because I loved this book so much. Yeah! Down the Drain by Julia Fox. Down the Drain by Julia Fox. More like the Bible for hot people. So this is an autobiography, and it is basically Julia's winding whirlwind of a life and rise to stardom, because it starts literally like her as a little girl coming to America for the first time, and it ends present day around, like, I would say a few months after her break with Kanye, I think, is where she ends the book narratively. If you really care that much about the timeline. And I did give this book, I literally wrote 1 million stars. Unserious as hell. I could not even give this a 5 out of 5 stars. I just said 1 million stars. And I wasn't expecting to be so invested in this fucking book, but I have to shout her out. Nicole Raffi, Nikki Nasty. I watched her video where she narrated some like sections of the book, and I think she was dressed as Julia Fox, and she talked about the book, and it made me quite curious to read it. But even then, when that curiosity had been piqued, it was just because, like, this sounds funny, you know? Like, if you know Julia Fox's speech style, her writing style is very much the same. And so I was like, oh my God, this is going to be funny as fuck to read. Are you kidding me? And it was. This book got me to laugh out loud at times, which for a book is really hard for me to do. I don't know why. Well, maybe it's just because I don't really read funny stuff like that, but maybe that's a conversation for another day. But yeah, this book, not even just that, like not even just the laughter, this book hits. This book hits. Maybe it hits only if you're like damaged. So if you're like a perfectly normal person and you've had like a well-rounded life and you're like upper middle class, this book isn't for you. You're not gonna like it. You're not gonna relate. But if you're a stinky little lady, it's hard for me. I've expressed this before. It's kind of hard for me to talk about why I like things without just repeatedly going, it's so good, I like it so much. Girl, we fucking get it. So I'm going to try and be specific. I don't know if this makes sense, but you know when like smart people talk, but they know that they are smart, and so they like to present themselves and speak as such, you know? This is not that, even though Julia is smart. I will go on record right here, hand on Bible, saying Julia Fox is a genius. And maybe that's a hot take. However, even though she is smart, and like you can tell that from reading the book, she's creative and very intelligent and talented, and an aware individual, I feel, truly. But she doesn't come across it that way. You know, she's not talking about like her like I guess political consciousness as a kid, because she has been politically left, like really, and you can see it in the book, her entire life. Like at 10 she was in DC protesting, and she talks about it in the book. So the thing is that she doesn't talk about that kind of thing or talk at all really as if she is like a genius spilling like some fucking info that you, a commoner, have never heard before. You know, some smart people talk like that, and it pisses me off, and I can't read shit like that. And maybe that's like a slow brain thing of me, you know, but it's not like a lack of comprehension of the material. If I don't like your tone and I feel like you're talking down to me, I'm not going to want to read your fucking book. And I don't feel like that at all with this book. And it's honestly really nice to, I guess, read the writings of someone who you can tell is smart, but is very like casual. It makes for like an engaging and easy to follow read, easy to be invested. She's very personal. She comes off as like an older sister. Like in my head, like she's literally my older sister, her and Megan Thee Stallion. But that, like, I don't know who our parents are. It would have to be two women. Jessica Lange and Sarah Paulson are our parents. Me, Julia Fox, and Megan Thee Stallion are triplets. So it's engaging and it's emotionally investing. Like she is just a comforting person, I guess, even when she's talking about stuff that is not comforting at all. Like I just opened up to a random tab. I have tabs everywhere in this fucking book. And the thing I tabbed is I peek out from under the pillow, fighting back tears. I managed to utter the words, "It's okay, but it's not okay. Nothing is okay, and now there's no way out." And she just kind of drops shit like that, which is another thing I really like in this book, is that it's called Down the Drain. So I feel like you would almost think of it as like a downward spiral. But honestly, the course of her life is a fucking crazy roller coaster. And to have it all laid out through her perspective is like gripping, I guess. I was trying to think of maybe a better word, but I can't. It's fucking gripping. It feels like you're there. I feel bad because I feel like I'm being a little vague, but like, dude, you literally have to read this book. I'm sorry, you have to read the book because it goes from like point A to point B to dot, dot, dot. Like her life moves really fast, which I guess makes sense if you're trying to fit your entire life story into a book. You want to fit all of like the interesting parts into it. But similarly to Jeanette, something I appreciate about it is that she's filling in, you know, the big parts of her life, the parts of her life that have made her, you know, question her relationships with people or an industry, you know, like everything she brings up is with reason. And you can see how it shapes her as a person as we continue through the book, which is also kind of cool because when the book starts from, I want to say she was like 7, no, maybe 12. I don't know. She was young when she moved to America from Italy for the first time with her dad. And so you can see, like, you get introduced to her as a little person, you know, as a kid, but you still get that sense of her character. And you can see how that stays while also like developing throughout the story, which is really cool. I will say, if I have to give a criticism, I think the one criticism that I have is maybe not like, it's not even on the book itself, but I don't know. There are definitely times where, in her retrospect, when she's retelling these events, in my opinion, there are times where during her retrospection and her telling of events, she kind of lets the context of the event remove her accountability in the event, if that makes sense. Like, there are times in the book where Julia is like she definitely could make a better choice than she does. If I was reaching a little bit, I could say that like she kind of at times excuses her own behaviors because of the situation she's in. And I do mean that in very few circumstances, because a lot of the times there are things like that are out of her control, or there are situations where she was like in danger. But I'm talking about the other times. Like, girl, you really did fumble when you cheated on that sugar daddy. But I support women's wrongs. So can I really get mad? And also, there's self-awareness, even if there's maybe not the most straightforward accountability. And you know what? Maybe there doesn't even need to, that sounds bad. Now I just feel like I'm making excuses. But I would argue that you don't have to take accountability for every single thing after you like tell these things. You know, I do think I would prefer the current version of the book where she doesn't get on herself as much as she maybe could, because like some things she does are questionable. Yeah, those things were questionable. However, I do think it would be less enjoyable of a read if she went, like, after doing something questionable, she took a paragraph or whatever to go, now I know this is bad, but hear me out. Because that's not really the point. And she's also not trying to, like, make herself seem any which way. Like, she's not in the story making herself out to be the victim, you know, or being like, all of this happened to me, so it's okay if I, you know, am a little bit messed up, right? Because I think that people reading the book would know that, you know, but it really is just like a little objectively laid out of like, here's my life from this point to this point, and here's the things that happened, and here's the way I acted. And sometimes it isn't like the model like behavior for the situation, but that's what I fucking did, you know. Like, she doesn't grovel with the audience at any point or really glorify anything, which I feel like some people might disagree with me, because there's a lot of illegal and immoral activity in the book. But she is never telling it like it's cool. You know, like, there are, obviously it's called Down the Drain. Like, she hits hard points in her life and she is aware of that. But it's interesting because it kind of is a downward spiral in that sense. Like, there are times in the book where not verbatim, but basically it's like, yeah, this sucks. Like, I'm kind of fucked right now. And that's just how life goes. You know, there are a lot of funny moments. There are a lot of gripping moments. There are shocking moments. There are relatable moments. This book is just all around so good. I feel like deeply connected to it. When I finished the book, I did exactly this, which if you're not watching on the video right now, I will act out, or I'll explain what I'm doing. I finished reading the book, and I just silently, I closed it, and I just held it to my chest and closed my eyes and just cried a little bit, because I was so sad it was over, because I enjoyed it so much. Like, it really just felt like talking to your older sister, or like living life through that person. Like, she's a very comforting, intelligent, relatable narrator, at least to my personal demographic. So maybe if you're like a 30-year-old dude, this won't pertain to you. But hey, 30-year-old dude, go away. But yeah, I hope that my ramblings were a little sensical, and I hope that they persuaded you to pick this book up or listen to it on Spotify, because I'm pretty sure she does narrate it on Spotify. All right, guys. And that brings us to the moment I'm a little afraid of, because this is, I think, going to be the unpopular opinion segment of the video. Because this is the first non-autobiography that we're talking about. And when I shared that I was reading this book on my Instagram, which you can follow me on if you want, a lot of people were happy and excited to hear that I was reading it, because they really liked it and were excited to hear my thoughts. And guys, I'm sorry, but I don't think you'll like my thoughts on Bunny by Mona Awad. This is I guess, surrealist thriller. I wouldn't even consider it YA adult fiction. I'm not 1,000% sure what it would be categorized. I'll call it a surrealist, quote unquote, feminist thriller. And it's by Mona Awad, and it is the story of the main character. Her name is Samantha Mackey, and it's her final year at the elite university she goes to. She's in their creative writing program. And so the book is about her final year and her chaotic collision with her cultish classmates in this creative writing program. And I gave this book, I gave it a 2.5 out of 5. And that was me being generous. Oh, so let's talk about it, because I wanted to like this book so bad. And for a good while, I really did. This book fucks itself over the longer you read it, in my opinion. But I could totally be wrong about that. And if, as I'm like rambling about this, if you have input, which I am encouraging, if you have read this book, feel free, please leave it, because I literally downloaded Goodreads just to read other people's thoughts on this book when I finished it, because I was like, I must have missed something. I must have accidentally skipped some pages, or like maybe I'm just stupider than I think I am, because what are y'all on right now? What are y'all on right now calling this a feminist fucking masterpiece? But let's talk about it. So I really liked this book at the start. I really did. I think the main issues are with the third act. I think the third act is the weakest. I think the third act is genuinely bad, honestly. And it really put a very sour taste in my mouth on this book, because up until, let's see, where was like the peak? I was like into it for a good bit, and I was holding on for a while of like, I'm picking up all of the things that you're putting down, all of these puzzle pieces that you're laying out. I am picking them up. I'm putting the puzzle together. I'm following you. I don't understand what the fuck your point of talking is, though. And that ultimately is like my takeaway and my issue with the book. But before I get a little too much into that, I have some bullet points of like my biggest issues with the book, and there aren't a lot, but they ultimately overpower my positive emotions towards the book. So the first was the third act. It slows down. It gets too weird in like a non-constructive or effective way, to where it's like almost like the author lost the plot, in my opinion. And I feel like you do need to read the book to understand that. I'm sorry. I don't want to get like too thorough into the details of the books, because I do hope that people read them, because even if I wasn't obsessed with this, I do hope that this encourages you to read it, maybe, because maybe you want your perspective challenged, or maybe you want to see if you agree or disagree or whatever. I don't know if I'd recommend this book though. Anyway, the other issue I have is a character named Jonah. Jonah was fucking dumb and useless. Why was he there? He was only there. He got introduced. The second he got introduced, I was like, oh, dumb love interest that the main character is going to be forced to be into. And like, that's kind of true. Like, I feel like it's always like kind of there in subtext, but nothing's ever done. And Jonah himself doesn't add anything to the story. And he's in like several somewhat important scenes. Maybe that's not true. He does have several like bigger scenes where he has like a good amount of the speaking time, and it provides fucking nothing to the story. Why was he there? He was literally just like the dumb floating male character for the main character to maybe end up with, if the owner felt like it at the end. The author, sorry, if the author felt like it at the end. Don't like him. Don't like Jonah. My third bullet point literally says, what was the point? And point is all caps and underlined, because as I've kind of said this already, where I'm just not sure what the point is. I would like to expand on that a little bit more, because a big context to that is that it's implied that this is feminist literature. To me, maybe I'm wrong about that, and call me if I'm wrong on it. But like Margaret Atwood, writer of Handmaid's Tale, called the book, the author of the book, "Oh, Bunny, you are so genius." That is from Margaret Atwood on the cover of this book. So I'm thinking, okay, Margaret Atwood referred to this as genius, and like the author as genius for writing this. I must be missing something. Guys, I missed something. Because when you think about it, if you read the whole story, I could argue that this book is anti-feminist, which is why I genuinely think I fucking missed something. And let me explain why I think it's anti-feminist. Because honestly, I thought that the premise, honestly, just for some context, the premise is very like Mean Girls-esque, sort of, like in the bare bones of it. Because it starts with Samantha. She's hanging out with her like gothic antisocial friend, and they hate this clique of this like trio or quadruple of these girly feminine girls who are like perfect grades, and they're the teacher's pet, and they have the shiny blonde hair, you know? And so whenever Samantha starts to get involved with them, with the bunnies, that's who they are, I thought that it was going to be like, okay, this is going to challenge Samantha's view, right? Or something is going to happen that's going to make us confirm Samantha's views, I guess. And honestly, I don't think that's the case. I think, honestly, my biggest issue comes down to going back to what is the point, and more so, what is not Samantha, the author, Mona Awad. What is she actually trying to say about the real world? Because a lot of authors use real world societal issues to inspire and make messaging in their works in fiction. So with the context and knowledge that I have of this being implied to be feminist literature, I can't have that takeaway, because I would argue that this book comes off more as anti-feminist. And I feel like that might be a hot take. And so again, maybe I'm missing something. Please let me know if I am. But I do have several reasons for thinking this. And I think a lot of it comes down to another big issue that I have with the book, which is Samantha being the main character and her as a character. Because she just, I don't know how to fucking explain it. You know how someone, like, what's that meme from Meet the Robinsons where it's like Goob walking down the hallway and it's like, "Hey Goob, I like your binder. Hey Goob, want to hang out after school today?" And then Goob in his head is like, "They all hated me." That is fucking Samantha Mackey from this book, because she just has a chip on her shoulder at everything for what seems like the sake of it, because we don't ever really get into her as a person enough to know why she acts this way, other than her just thinking that she's the most misfortuned person ever, right? And obviously she has bad stuff happen to her, both before the book, which we learn like contextually. She talks about like her dad has problems, her mom is dead, I think. So like she obviously she has context as a person. I just don't think we get enough of it to explain her behavior, because she is just bitter. She's miserable, honestly. And you can tell that from the first page, or first, few pages, because it starts with her at this like party thing, like a dinner at the university for the final year of school, the senior year. And she's judging the bunnies who are there doing nothing but like looking pretty and talking to the staff. And you can tell immediately she loathes them. And honestly, the reasons being just aren't valid for the emotions there, at least at that time. I think I don't know. I think that like the idea of this book is really good and could have been like fucking awesome. I just think the choices and steps taken were really weird, because I think that you could justify like her attitude towards the bunnies after she's been involved with them, because then you understand like, oh, they're doing animal sacrifices and human experimentation. That's a little weird. They have magical powers. That's the twist. It gets surreal, guys. The bunnies are turning bunnies into boys by murdering rabbits. They're inventing their dream boyfriend, which is another anyway. So she doesn't know that, though. Samantha doesn't know that. Samantha doesn't really have a reason to dislike the bunnies. She does from the very beginning, though, which is fine. Sometimes you just don't like people. However, I just don't think it's like a good choice in your feminist literature to have your main character be this like tomboy, anti-society person hating for no reason stereotypically feminine women. I think that's weird. And so I honestly thought that there would be a learning lesson there by the end of the book. There's fucking not. I think it actually gets worse. And honestly, I can't even place this on Samantha. I am dissing Mona Awad's writing. I'm sorry, because I don't know you personally, and I wanted to like this, and I could totally just be missing something, dude. But just the way it progresses and fumbles into this mess where the climax is, I don't even know. There are two possible climaxes. I would argue that the one I would think is the actual climax of the book is not the actual climax. But there's a point in the book where all of the bunnies are fighting like rabid fucking animals over a man that Samantha invented out of a bunny, because she gets drawn into their cult and she makes the human sacrifices too, or animal sacrifices too. So you can't even like judge them because of that. But you weren't. You were just judging them for no reason. Anyway, me defending the bunnies. I am, honestly. This book literally made me defensive of the fucking bunnies by their author, against their author. Because why do I feel like she did them dirty? Because why did it end? Why did the book end with the bunnies rabidly fighting over this man? Like in the most pathetically stereotypical display of like catty women, you know? And it's just like, I don't understand the way that the main character talks about the bunnies is just, it's not, I'm just getting frustrated. I'm sorry, but like, please point to me the feminism in this book. Point to me an ounce of it, actually, because it literally just ends with Samantha. It ends with Samantha being like, well, I actually didn't go through any change at all. I'm kind of the exact same person as I was from when the book started. And I've come out on top, and I'm the winner, and I get to watch the bunnies suffer and embarrass themselves like dumb little girls arguing over a boy. And look at me, I'm Samantha Mackey. I'm so smug. And it's just like, what did you do to earn that smugness? You were a bunny. You were indoctrinated into the cult. The only reason you got out is because your best friend forcefully removed you. Like, she acts morally superior, and at the same time, like, she has no agency. And honestly, another fucking thing about her that I agree with the bunnies on this is because there is a time where the bunnies are like, why do you look down on us? Why do you dislike us so much? They don't say it like that. They say it admittedly cattier, but like, they are right. She, from the get, never really had a reason to to dislike the bunnies in the way she did. And she didn't dislike the bunnies like because of or afterwards the animal sacrifices. She was into them and got desensitized to them. Like she was fully drinking the Kool-Aid, right? But there's a point in the book where I want to say it's like the lead bunny is like, we text you, inviting you to things. You know, we have been in this class together. You just act like we're worms. You act like you're so above us with your misunderstood art and your misunderstood self, choosing to sit alone in class. And the thing is that they're fucking reading her. There's no lie on that, because genuinely, Samantha is not really given a challenge in the way that like Mona sets up challenges, because there are definitely points of conflict in the book. Absolutely. And there are even things that like should have developed into more than what they were. Like throughout the whole book, there's this weird tense relationship between Samantha and one of her professors, because it's implied that they like fucked last year and it ended kind of weird. And like he's brought into the narrative multiple times kind of for no reason, just to be like, just to exist there to make Samantha like, I don't know, have a human piece of her to like, what the fuck? What was his point? What was the point of like the weird, like, I am a big fan of surrealism, right? When it's sensical. And I know that that is almost contradictory, but no, it's not. Just think about it a little harder, because I do think that you have to be successful at surrealism to like do surrealism successfully. Fork found in kitchen, you know, you have to be good at something to do it good. And I don't think that the author is that. I think it's not even that she's bad at surrealism, because I really like the surrealist elements. She just gets carried away with them, especially in the third act. And it just gets really chaotic and weird, and nothing, not a fucking single thing comes of it. And it's like, what was the point? There's like several interactions between like Samantha is fucking kidnapped and tied up by these like mutated creatures that the bunnies made out of rabbits. Like they killed rabbits and turned like the human out of it into their professors to scare Samantha. And yet nothing happens. Nothing happened. Like it's supposed to be framed like a mind game, I guess, but it's just nothing. This book is fucking nothing. And I'm very frustrated because I really thought I was going to like it. And for a while, as I said, I really did. And I thought it was going to go a very different direction. But I think that there's just, the emphasis is on the wrong stuff for the point that I think was trying to be made, if that makes sense. I don't know. I really can't get over, like, when you think about the story outside of a fictional story, when you think about someone critiquing women for the sake of just being feminine and then framing them as these like crazy, like cultish, boy obsessed, people who like make bad art and think that it's more important than it actually is. And you make them the bad guy, but you don't actually focus on the things they do that are bad, right? Because, hey guys, animal sacrifices and human experimentation, I think we can agree are bad, but that's not really said after like the first time they kill a rabbit, because Samantha, again, is drinking the Kool-Aid. She doesn't care at some point. She will sit drenched in blood, smoking a cigarette because she doesn't care anymore. And while you could look at that and go like, you know, look at the effects that can have on a person's psyche, the book doesn't. The book doesn't. Samantha stays the same flat, boring victim that not even... I'm done. I'm done talking about it. I'm literally done talking about this book because I'm so frustrated at it. Like, I feel like I'm missing a piece of it because I literally cannot look at this book and think that it speaks highly of women or feminism. And that fucking irritates me. So yeah, that's my review of Bunny by Mona Awad. If you have more insight on it, please let me know, because I don't know. When I say I wanted to like this book, I do mean that. I repeat it because it's true. I don't want to in this regard, I'll never be a hater just for the sake of being a hater. And I don't even want to hate this, but I really, it just left a bad taste in my mouth. And towards the last few pages, when I realized oh, it's ending this way, I'm not going to say that my eyes got fuzzy, but maybe I did skim a little on the last few pages because it was such a disappointing read for me. So that is Bunny by Mona Awad. And those were my 4 recent reads. And also, if you did hear any whimpering in the background, Casper's dreaming. He's sleeping on the floor by the bed and I can hear him. If you can hear him, that's what it was. Those were my reads. I hope you liked my thoughts on them. And if you've read one or multiple or none of these books, I would be interested in you guys' thoughts. Because Lexi read, listened to I'm Glad My Mom Died. We listened to it together, but all of these I read separately and she hasn't read them. So I don't necessarily have someone that I can go ask their specific thoughts on these things, which is why I genuinely want to give you guys the floor to leave your thoughts on them, because there are definitely times where I have an opinion because I haven't factored in this, that, or the other, and someone makes me aware of it and it changes my perspective. So change my mind, guys. Steven Crowder would be like. All right, so that was this episode, and I'm gonna go because that's what I had to say. I hope you liked it. I do plan on doing more of these types of videos, so let me know what you thought about the format. And I'll give you guys, do you guys want to spoil on my recent read, the one that I've been teasing, even though I don't like it? I will. I'll give you a hint. It's called I'm a Fan by Sheena Patel. A hint. There you go. Anyway, that was this podcast episode. Thank you so much for listening to it. If you're on Spotify, go ahead and give the pod 5 stars if you haven't. And if you have a specific topic suggestion, go ahead and fill out that Q&A thing there. And if you're watching on YouTube, thank you so much for watching it. I hope you liked it. If you did, go ahead and give it a like, comment your thoughts, check out my other content or my other social media. And I will see you the next time I do something.